Hello, welcome to our VEE080.
What am I doing? What am I doing? What are we talking about?
What's up, guys? Welcome to the third installment of this 80 series with the twin turbo LS1. We will go back to all the info on the actual engine conversion and engine mounts and all that when we pull it back out to get everything coated and freshen up the engine. Obviously, the first two episodes we haven't really gone into depth about that very much yet, but it will come. Obviously, everything's just sat in there so that these manifolds and the exhaust and everything could be fabricated.
Everything's semi-permanent.
Semi-permanent for now. Yep.
So it's got to be done as it will be when it's finished to make sure that everything's going to fit during final assembly. Very important.
So we will give information on all that sort of conversion when we get to it. Just be patient with us.
There's really not that much information.
Well, the other one goes in the hull, and it's a 4L80 auto box. It's pretty much all there is to know, really.
That's the basics of it, and how it fits and where it sits and everything is very much on purpose, but there's a lot of small details involved with that little conversation. But yeah, basically where everything sits and where it is, nothing's an accident. Everything's been made to fit sort of exactly where it had to, but we'll go into that a bit later.
Anyway, for now we'll have a chat about this exhaust system and the shifter for the 4L80 that's been mounted inside.
Start recording yet? I'm not ready. He wasn't ready. How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow?
Unique, New York.
Unique, New York.
Unique, New York.
How fast could a fast tow car fast car? Nah, not ready. Oh shit, me paint. Oh, me paint again. Oh, more paint.
Oh, hello, how are ya? Do you want me to do it again? So, this is ye old shifter setup. First, as you can see, is far from the standard Toyota manual. Second, we've plugged up the old manual hole there and made up this very fancy looking bracket that you can see. Third, as with most of the stuff in this car, it was made out of scrap metal that we just had lying around. Fourth, fortunately we've managed to make it look half decent. Neutral. Not too much to tell other than we've got the B&M, I think it's called the Magnum Grip. Reverse. Magnum Grip shifter. Exactly the same as the TCI Outlaw, except that it's about $200 cheaper. Torque. So I've got the exact same shifter in my 1-tonner. This one's just a lot cheaper, and it just so happens it has changeable, as you can see under here, the actual shifter gate with your changeable gears. As you can see, the stock one's only for a 3-speed. I actually had to order this aftermarket. We've only just installed it today, and it works like a charm.
Tell us about the exhaust, mate.
It was a
So basically, all this stainless manifold and exhaust is all made of a material called 409 stainless, which is a stainless.
What stainless?
409.
Okay, you did get it right. Oh,
Duh. 409.
Makes no sense.
So anyway, it's all made of 409 stainless, which actually welds the same as mild steel. So that's what Rex here has done, made all these manifolds and exhaust out of. I suppose time's going to tell with how they're going to crack and how they're going to hold up, because we have not found any information on these being used for this sort of thing at all. So only time will tell about what's going on there, but they look great and they weld up well with just your stainless, your regular fucking gas welder.
That's right, our settings on our MIG didn't change at all from welding any other type of mild steel. In fact, with the 409, all of your flanges, all that sort of stuff, all that's mild steel. It welds great. The only issue we had was going through argon shield, which will happen with the amount of welding that we had to do. We've been told by some good friends of ours that have done this sort of stuff before, they don't recommend anything less than 3mm basically heavy duty steam pipe for building exhaust manifolds, purely for the fact that they crack under pressure and heat, which turbo manifolds obviously generate a lot of. As an experiment, we've still used 409 to do it. As you can see, we've actually made some braces that bolt back to the head on each side and brace back on the dump pipes of the turbos. And the theory at this point is that they should take some of the strain off the actual manifolds themselves while they're under pressure, and hopefully they'll help the manifold survive. However, time will tell.
That's what our first video was all about, in case you didn't get that in amongst all the gibberish that was in there. But
There's a lot of gibberish.
it was pretty much all about making these braces.
There's a lot of gibberish in these videos.
Plenty.
We apologise for that.
I don't apologise for anything.
Well, I apologise, but it's not going to change. Done!
So how long did it all take you in the end?
Forever. Took all of the time in my life. Can't say skied on the radio. So, this is the exhaust that we've built. It is a full 3-inch mandrel bent exhaust the entire way through. It was a massive bitch to complete. Obviously starts in the inner guard wells up here as our sort of first join after the dump pipes. We've got a 50 cell cat either side, and then runs, this is actually the stock factory route that the exhaust takes on the factory 80 series. Crosses over here into the chassis into this one side. In the Landcruisers you've got the main fuel tank right here. Means that you have to run the exhaust down one side unless you want to sacrifice a lot of ground clearance. Got to be careful here. This is the back of the transfer case, which is your rear drive shaft. You need to make sure that all of your exhaust components clear it. It's not in at the moment, but when we built this exhaust, we actually had the drive shaft bolted in to make sure that we were never going to have any problems. We did have a couple of clearance issues up the front, mostly on this driver's side here. Normally you'd have more room, except that in this particular case with our 4L80E gearbox, the entire transfer case is moved back around about 30mm. It actually consumed a lot more room than we initially expected, and this side was actually quite tight with the bends to make sure we had enough clearance with the factory fuel lines, which are up against the chassis rail, and the transfer case, which is still here. From there, obviously, we've gone into our X-pipe, and just a single muffler. This is actually a single muffler with 2 straight through pipes. So these 2 entries actually just run 2 straight pipes from front to back, and we go into the back of the chassis. That's the only muffler in this actual system. The theory is that the turbos will take quite a bit of the noise out of it, and that this single muffler should be enough to keep it, I guess, reasonable, you'd call it, for road legal use. So far back to here, we've had quite a few headaches with clearancing issues, but from there back is where the really, really difficult stuff was. As you can see back here, your normal 80 series exhaust, on this one at the very least, they normally run here, and skate through between your trailing arm and the spring. The previous twin system we had on this car for the 350 was a twin 2.5, managed to squeeze both pipes through this particular gap. Not possible with a 3-inch exhaust. Even as it is with the single 3 that runs through here, we actually did have to slightly modify the chassis with the spring and shock perch up in here just to take a little bit off the lip to make sure it would clear it. That was mostly because of the trailing arm. Now the thing you have to remember is that obviously on the hoist like this, there's plenty of clearance up in here on the body, but you've got, I think if I remember right, it was with this particular car, it's about 230 mil of travel before it hits the bump stops. So it actually took, this is where a lot of the time went in, is to making sure that this entire system clears all of the diff and the drive shaft components when this thing is actually at full bump. If you're off-road, it actually meant that this second pipe here had to go up over the chassis rail. It's really hard to see on camera, but there are literally like 2-3 millimeters between chassis and pipe and the body and the pipe there. It's so tight up through there, we've actually had to use, on this particular joint here, we can't use just a normal 2-bolt flange as we've used in the rest of the exhaust, because the 2-bolt flange will not fit through that gap. So we've actually had to use, this particular clamp is for an intercooler, however it'll suit our purposes just fine, and they've just been butted together and clamped really, really tight. So looking from the back here gives you a pretty good idea of the sort of clearancing issues that you run into, particularly on the Landcruisers. So to make all this stuff, make sure that it was going to clear, I disconnected this trailing arm, had it jacked up to full bump. I had string lines out for the panhard bar and for the rear brake adjuster. I really went to a lot of trouble to make sure that none of this stuff is going to hit when you hit a big bump or when the car's really loaded up with the trailer and things like that. And as a result, this is where a lot of the time went, was actually in manufacturing. Just this last part here, I probably stitched it together, measured it and cut it out about 4 times just to make sure that it was right. And I'm not sure if you can see it up in here, there is literally millimeters up in here between both of these exhausts and the chassis. And the reason for that is that they could only go through exactly where they are, because on the driver's side here, you can see you've got the driver's side trailing arm and you've got the main pumpkin on the exhaust. So when they come up at full bump, this pipe actually fits just in this small gap here. Same with the passenger side exhaust here. Originally I actually brought it through here thinking that it would be fine. It would not clear this brake bracket, and even so on that side, it's only just going to clear that, as well as getting around the other trailing arm mount. Obviously this diff breather is just pulling against it. We're going to move that to a more appropriate location before we run it like this. We don't want that resting against a hot exhaust. And then from there, we decided to run it out. We had a couple of options with where to run it. I've chosen to run it out with the tow bar, just because it keeps it up nice and high, close to the body. And as with the rest of the entire exhaust, it's all been positioned so that it gives us as much clearance as possible. Crouching down, if you look through, none of these components, until you get back to here, are lower than the chassis at all. And even then, you've got only a couple of mil. So that should keep our entire exhaust system nice and protected when we're going off-road, and won't sacrifice any departure angles at the back here.
Oh. Oh. Oh my god. Oh, it's gross. Oh.
Oh no. No, it might work. It's going to be pretty shit, but...
So I always wear my good white work shirt for doing greasy type crap. It's going to do what I do with the rest of the ugly stuff on this thing. I'm going to put it up here where no one will ever see it again. And it looks neat. Don't video it. Well, I will say that as much as we thought it would take a lot of time to make the turbo manifolds and the dump pipes with the wastegates and stuff like that, it has literally taken more than twice as long to go from the dump pipes back to the tail than it did to do the rest of it. And I think all up has taken somewhere between about 55 and 60 hours total, from heads to turbos all the way back to the tailpipes. Most of it being in just that section from the front wheels back. It has just been an epic job. It's huge. He's a sicko. Benefits of living in the bush. You get to see some cool little critters every now and then. This little buddy nearly stood on him on the way out the door. We'll go let him out the back here in the water where he's happy.
And when it comes to the door, I'll smash it with a hammer!